My angels, we're in session. Let's take one together. Here we go. I so want to be a leader in calm in this world. It's just anything I can do. Ring a bell, chime a chime. Ooh, I need some chimes. Actually, that's my next move. It's what I want to do. It's what I want to do. I want to be really, truly of service to you guys here on this channel. Is my camera funny? Sorry. I don't know what's going on. We're good. I want this to be a place where you come and you immediately just feel at peace, at home. Otherwise, why would you spend your precious time, right? So I do hope it is like that. And again, I'm not going to be for everybody. I know that there's just there's billions and billions of people on this planet. And no one is for everyone. But anyways, welcome. That's really it. Welcome. Having my cup of tea. All right. So today we're going to see how this goes. I am going to take a stroll with you into the kingdom of God. For those of you who are just joining and maybe you haven't seen older videos, so I turned my final dissertation into the University of Oxford in September, where I had been studying ancient Hebrew, the ancient Near Eastern culture of the Old Testament, the floods, all that stuff is so interesting to me. Okay, I just went and grabbed my Bible. Ooh, this is my big old Bible, one of my earlier ones. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the kingdom of God, but I want to do this in a different way because I like to, my brain is less interested in the academic memory of things, and it's more interested in paradigm, really understanding paradigms, really understanding if we're asking the right questions and if we're coming at something from the most unbiased or logical vantage point, if that makes sense. Just like I like my steak cooked for me as fresh as possible and put on my table, and I want to cut into that steak and I want there to be butter dripping off of it, and I want to eat it, and I want to chew it, and I want to digest it. I love it. It makes me feel so good. It's so nourishing, right? It makes me strong. It makes me feel like I can conquer the world. Okay, I do not like somebody chewing up my steak and putting it on my plate and then me eating it. Does that make sense? Disgusting. I know that's disgusting. It grosses me out even just to say it. However, that is what people do with this Bible. Unfortunately, that is probably the most realistic image I can give you for what is happening right now globally with Christendom, Judeo-Christianity. It is not to say that anybody is meaning to do it or knows what they're doing, but we've just got to this tipping point with theology, with belief systems, where it's not the first time in the world that it's, gone mental, certainly not, but it's another time where we've gotten way out of balance, and what we're seeing in media and what we're perceiving are a lot of concepts that it's just making everybody scratch their head. Okay. The way we translate ideas is so important. We have to stay connected to the original anchored text. Remember, the author has authority. Okay. The authority of what this thing says, New Testament, Old Testament, the authority is not yours and not mine, right? It isn't a denomination's. It isn't it's nobody's except the author's. So what the author meant when they wrote it, just like if you wrote me a letter, it means what you meant it to mean to me, not what Joe 4 generations down, who'd been through heartache and this trauma and that trauma, not how they read it through their lens and gave it to me. It means what you said to me originally. Does that make sense?
We're going to have this conversation about the kingdom of God today by starting with are we even asking the right questions? Are we even approaching this subject from the right vantage point? And so to do that, I'm going to hand you John Walton's work. I'm going to hand you Marcus Borg's work, N.T. Wright's work. Okay, and just my caveat is none of these thoughts that I'm giving you today, well, hopefully, I don't know what I'm going to say. I have lots of thoughts of my own, but for the most part, these are people way beyond me, way better than me. And you can get all of their books and have a deeper dive if you want. But what I want you to know that really shaped how I studied for 5 years was through understanding that what these great scholars were telling me was that in order to understand any of this, right? This is New Testament, this is Old Testament. I'm going to generally pick a section, okay? Let's say this is all Old Testament, this is New Testament. Old Testament's quite big, isn't it? Way bigger than the New Testament. And then there's this funny period in between them. What splits them, right? These are just the basics that you might want to know. Well, this period, I'm going to take a very wide, broad view of scholars, but this would be anywhere from 3500 BC, right? The first texts that were found, okay, the Dead Sea Scrolls, all the way up to 500-ish BC, okay? That's when this was written, all right? This is written right amongst all of the ancient Sumerian cultures, texts, the ancient Mesopotamian, the Egyptian texts are going on, the Ugaritic, the Akkadian, the Assyrian, Babylonian. This is the ancient Near Eastern world. This text sounds like the other texts. It follows a lot of literary structure, just like the other texts. It's written in the same category, genre of what would be considered mythology. It's all of that they share with the rest of the cultures and empires that are going on in the ancient world. A lot of people feel like the New Testament sounds a lot different from the Old Testament. And there's reasons for that. It is written much later. So this part, okay, actually, let me go in the middle. So this gap would be what's called the intertestamental period. This is a 400-year gap. Let's just generously, broadly date this intertestamental time, which is considered a silent period, which is not true at all. There's so much Jewish theology being formed in this time. Okay, our wonderful books of Enoch are being formed in this time. Another apocryphal literature, lots of stuff is being written in this time. And the stuff that's being written in this time is being written based on things that were going on in this time. All right. Now Christ comes, he's born anywhere between 5 BC, right? And nobody really thinks he was born in 0 AD, but we'll just go broad. So he's born, right? The calendar starts at 0. And you have the whole time he's living, think 5 BC to 33 AD, anywhere there, because we know he was 33 when he died. All right, so then you have the disciples who were writing and scribing throughout their walk with him, but they're really forming their works, and all of that's being passed on orally, and it's being committed to writing. And then you have this all being written between 30 AD, generous, and let's say up to 70 AD is Second Temple destruction. So let's just go up to 100 AD, just so it covers everybody's views, all right? And maybe there's people who think beyond that, but that's what we're dealing with here. All right, now why have I taken so long to tell you that? Because even though people tend to feel that the Old Testament and the New Testament, they're different, like, there's different tones to them, there's really not. There's really not. And that's one of the biggest misunderstandings of Christianity. This entire text, every single author from A to Z, right, from beginning to end of this book, was a member of the ancient world, and the ancient world's ontological views. What does that mean? Ontology is the study of the existence of things, how it's a perspective, okay? And they all had the ancient perspective, the same, even Paul, right? Now you've got the New Testament is going to be influenced by what's called Platonism or Neoplatonism. It's going to be influenced, its authors are going to be developing their arguments and expressing their arguments influenced by Stoicism, Gnosticism, Pelagianism. There's a lot of isms from the Greek world that the authors in here are interacting with, okay? But they still have, we have still not gotten to the Enlightenment period, which, fast forward, let's say this is 100 AD. Fast forward so far, go all the way up to 1100, 1200, 1300 AD, okay? That's when the ontological shift happens. And that's when people begin to really care about empirical facts, right? Right before the Industrial Evolution, right before the Industrial Revolution, right when that Age of Reason, the Enlightenment, all of those things happen, and the collective conscience changes. And what that means is that what they are prioritizing, their paradigms for stories, the things they know and aren't even saying to us in here, because they're just part of their understanding and the way they see things, that is completely different from how we see. 1930s, 1940s, Nietzsche, Bonhoeffer, my favorite theologian of all. Sorry to all the others. One of my favorites, most pretty much. These books and all of the books on your shelves that are written after the Enlightenment, okay, to show you, this is the ancient world's ontological view. This is a functional ontological view, okay? Functional ontological. It means every author in this book prioritized function, which is what? Relationship. The relationship between one object and another object. That is why people believed that the stars were gods, because they were understanding that everything was in a relationship, okay? They did not care about measuring facts. Certainly their writings do not express that they were bothered about what something was made of, okay? Because they were very happy from a totally different point of view. They were satisfied by understanding its function in their lives. They needed to order their world. They needed to understand their world, okay? And so what was important to them was the relationship between humanity and the stars, the relationship between humanity and the water, the ocean, the relationship between humanity and kings and rulers, okay? At the creation. This world was completely holistic, interdependent upon each other. If somebody did something bad, it meant it was not going to rain. And that was not a foolish thought. Everybody accepted that as divine cause and effect. Okay, that is the world that every single author in this book understood. All right? Functional ontological point of view. We're fast tracking through university stuff. Isn't it cool? All right. If you want the best, hold on. If you want the best author, in my opinion, that is where I'll give my opinion. And I've read lots of books. This author is my favorite, John Walton, okay? The Lost World of Genesis 1. He does lots of books. The Lost World of the Flood. He co-authors with N.T. Wright. You'll love his stuff. And it's academic, but it's not written in like highbrow speech, okay? Okay. I like using books. They're my friends. They feel like my friends. Okay, so if you can understand that right there, then half of your work is done. So the authors of this book are living in a world of empire, okay? In between this world of empire and the world we understand and know is you have the Roman Empire going on just amidst the New Testament, right? Christ dies in the Roman Empire. You've got the rise and fall of that happening. You have the legalization of Christianity. Constantine's coming onto the scene. You have the Desert Father movement, the monastic movement going on, which is, and then basically you start to see as Christianity spreads, you see it going into Catholicism, right? You've got the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, and if you're in England or anywhere around here, you know that story well. These two different denominations are basically trying to kill each other. You have the Eastern Orthodox Church splitting off from that. They're kind of like abandoned by Protestantism and Catholicism, and anyways, that's why Eastern Orthodox has its own different expression. You have all the Eastern religions developing in the East. You have the medieval times coming, right? So you've got the Catholic indulgences and you've had the Christian Crusades. It's just a freaking nightmare between like 900, 100, 1000 AD and all the way up to like 1500s. It's just, that is not the time period I would have ever wanted to live in. Lots of abuse of power going on, lots of division. Moving on. I'm saying that so you understand how thought changed. There was so much abuse of power throughout this whole time. Really disgusting, horrible stuff going on, that people start to go, hang on, we won't be treated this way, right? You have the Industrial Revolution going on. So you have this sense of like, we're going to think for ourselves. We're going to move for ourselves. The Renaissance is going on. Poetry, there's something waking up in the human spirit, thank God, because he does, art, creativity, all of that stuff. God is not going to let us exist on a planet that does not have art and creativity and love and passion and pleasure and all of the things and freedom. And so thankfully we have this movement swinging, and I say that compassionately because what happens is as we start to enter the age of reason, the good thing about it is we were trying to break off as a species. We were trying to break away from all that you have to go to church and you have to think this way and classism and all that, to we suddenly kind of almost overcorrect, and we overcorrect and we start to prioritize logic and reason. And with that is the shift from functional ontology to material ontology. It only makes sense that it happens because our technology starts to get better. So we start to be able to, like Galileo and Newton, we start to be able to examine and measure the stars. Aristotle, who's more closer to here than here, Aristotle has started Plato and Aristotle have started to stir up all of our desires to put things into class and to observe things, and that whole shift in science is going on in the midst of all this too. So I'm trying to do really broad strokes. I hope this is helping you guys. But what you have to understand is that for reasons of technology and for reasons of just the human spirit needing creativity and to be free, moving into the age of reason means we have started to throw out mythology, and we throw out stories as having authority. We throw out foolishness, because the foolish and naive were stomped on by empire, right? So what happens is by the time you get to 1940s, boy, we've got Hitler going, we've got lots of stuff going on, and we're approaching with the Age of Reason, so with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason and all of that going on, as well as like all of the developments in science, you have people, by the time we get to our day and age, you have people who have decided that what is the most important thing in order to be credible is to throw away all mythology, throw away foolish tales, and thinking of everybody who's anybody in the science communities, in the theology communities, even the writers, like even the poets and even the influential Descartes and the philosophers. They are prioritizing knowledge and empiricism and logic over what we call logic over mythology. And what people prioritize is what shows their ontological view. So relationships, stories, and myths are prioritized here. Logic, reason, and material, what is something made of. I don't really care so much what it does or how it connects with me. I want to know what it's made of, what's behind the scenes. Okay? So in order to understand this book, you have to understand the ancient world in which it was written, in which the authors lived. In order to understand this book, anything from this book, you have to understand what is called the ancient domination system. Now, this is a lot of Marcus Borg's work, but this is a world of empires and kingdoms. This is a world of rulers, territory, and domain was everything. So we're going to be having this conversation from the author of Genesis's viewpoint. We're going to go back into the story that they've told us, right? And what they've told us is that the God who set up this temple, this earth, right, which is the whole creation story, all ancient cosmologies are considered temple accounts in the ancient world, which it just means it's how a ruler sets up his kingdom, sets up his home, right? So Eden is the temple that the Creator, Yahweh, set up for himself. Just like the Egyptian stories, Ra, and set up their temples, and the ancient help me, Ea and Lil, right? They set up their temple, and every ancient cosmology has the story of how its creator set up the temple, or creators. They're not all the same at all, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. So Yahweh, in this story, has set up his temple and put human beings in charge of his temple. The author is telling us that he has given them dominion over this garden, over this world. Okay? Dominion. And what dominion is that they would be representatives, little gods towards all of creation, and they would be good and benevolent and generous and authoritative and governing and ruling, and they would subdue, but they would order, and they would name, and they had functions, and all that they functioned in was dominion. Dominion is when a creature is in line with its creator, and through that alignment functions in a benevolent way towards all of creation. Okay? Now, the rest of the world is in a state of what's called domination. Okay? And I've already told you guys, taking you through that little historical run through, this is the world of empire against this one little. Okay, so I may or may not have had to run downstairs and solve a little teenager quarrel, but it's kind of thrown me off. But I think that I was just getting ready to wrap up anyways to say to you guys that the author of Genesis is giving us our first preset for the telos of humanity, the telos, the purpose, the meaning of why we're here and what we're doing in the first chapter of Genesis. And that is to have dominion on earth. Dominion is benevolence. It is governing with benevolence on earth. Okay. It's making the rest of earth like Eden. Okay. That's the paradigm of heaven on earth that we hear heaven on earth later on throughout. Okay. The rest of this entire experience that every author and every person in this book is having, right through from the fall of Adam, from the moment that Adam and Eve walk out those gates, domination enters. It enters within, and they're entering into a world of what we call, or Marcus Borg, I don't think he coined the term, but at least in academia, it's called the ancient domination system. The rest, outside of this little sliver, okay, the rest of all of this is domination system, okay? Every empire that will rise and fall, every shift of humanity, every new governing system, every realm within our experience of humanity, okay? Whether it's healthcare, government, ecology, religion, family, marriage, every single realm that humanity lives in is a realm of domination, okay? And that's the most important thing for you and I to understand in this conversation that we're going to keep having about the kingdom of God, because the kingdom of God is within us, and it is also the reality that, that's not what I want to say. When Adam and Eve walked out of the gates, when they were exiled from the Garden of Eden, when they quote unquote fell, what entered into their system epistemologically, right, the way that they handled knowledge, was as little false gods. And that means that the spirit of domination, the function of domination, became their new default system. Okay? Dominion is what they experienced before, and that was only possible as they were in relationship with their creator. The enthroning of the false god is the spirit of domination sitting within us on a throne. I will possess or I will destroy. Okay? Walking out of those gates, they walked into the rest of the earth, which was aside from Eden. That was actually, at that point in time, that was ruled by dark forces. Okay? They had authority over the earth, and that was a system and a realm of domination explicitly. Okay, so we're talking unseen realm. From the fall of Adam, right through every single empire that would ever rise and fall, right through Israel's covenanting with God, every covenant paradigm that happens, it all is existing in a world of domination. Domination is within, domination is without. Okay? And when Christ comes, that crucifixion, right, is a new paradigm for covenant. But what changes is that with the sending back of the Spirit, right, with that baptism of fire, the human experience is now able to re-enter into that fullness of Imago Dei. And with that is the reinstallation of dominion, okay? And dominion has come to dethrone domination, all right? I'm going to read you a quote from, who is it? Desmond Tutu, who's paraphrasing St. Augustine. He says, God without us will not. He's not going to transform the world without us. There will be no divine rescue if we don't get it right. It's not as if God will let us go to the cliff, to the brink of environmental disaster, and then suddenly intervene to make it right. We, without God, cannot. Okay? God without us will not. We without God cannot. God's not going to transform the world without us. But that doesn't mean that we're on our own. It's all up to us. Okay? So we without God cannot. Augustine said, God made you without you. God will not save or transform you without you. God will not transform you against your will. We are called to participate in that. Okay? And I want to leave it there for today because these are the concepts we're building on. But we are going to start in the next episode with, we're going to get a little bit more, explain a little bit more what domination, what we're experiencing when we're talking about domination versus dominion. And it's just such an interesting conversation to have. Anyways, that is enough for tonight. Class dismissed. I love you guys. Have a really good night. I'm going to go eat some dinner. I'll see you tomorrow.